So early in the week, PlayStation announced that they were going to be raising their price of the PlayStation 5, PlayStation 5 Pro, and PlayStation 5 Digital Edition. The PlayStation is going up to $550 for the regular disc version, the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition is $500, and the PlayStation 5 Pro is now up to $750. This comes not super long after Xbox already raised the price of their own console, and Nintendo raised the price of a bunch of their accessories but did not increase the price on the base Switch 2 model. Xbox, their pricing model has always been a lot different from all of the other companies. They have a variety of prices to which a lot of consumers could want to get into the Xbox sphere, and they start off at $380 with the Xbox Series S with only 512 gigabytes of storage, the Xbox Series S with a terabyte of storage, $430. The Xbox Series X has a digital edition for $550, Xbox Series X is $600, and then the X with 2 terabytes is at $730. Now, the Xbox Series S is probably the best deal on the market in terms of all of the hardware, because you can get it with those limited storage models and lesser power to be able to play all of your third-party games, and that very much only goes for a specific type of gamer. I am not that type of gamer, and most people are not those types of gamers. People who will only play sports games, people who will only play shooter games, Xboxes are perfect for those types of people, and in fact, there are a lot of those types of people, aren't there, on the US, but PlayStation and Nintendo are pretty much the best two consoles to go to in terms of exclusives and in terms of versatility and even third-party options. But of course, this is all about Nintendo, right? That's what my channel is about, Ray's Nintendo Talk. We are here to talk about the Switch 2 because this now makes the Switch 2 look very, very cheap. Of course, when Xbox raised their prices up back in May, I did not have a lot to say about that because no one really cares about what Xbox does. It really matters what PlayStation decides to do. And now they have finally raised their prices. Not long after, they just reported their most profitable period ever. Their most profitable period ever just happened, and they want to tell us that economic issues are causing them to raise the price. Okay, sure, Sony, sure. And briefly, just as an aside, let me not be hypocritical here. I am not at all saying that companies should not be able to raise their prices if they feel that is what they should do. With Nintendo, I have been very, very consistent in saying it sucks. I am not a fan of them increasing the price of their accessories, of their controllers, even their games being up to $80 sometimes now. I don't like any of that, but it is much better, in my opinion, than raising every single game that already exists in price and adding more money to a console that already exists. Now, Nintendo raised the price of the base Switch from 2017 and the Switch OLED, and I am not a fan of that, but it's not their current generation console anymore, and over 150 million people already have Switches. So if you want to buy a Switch, why did you wait this long? Why did you wait this long? Just buy a Switch 2. Just buy a Switch 2. And that console sits at $450 by itself, $500 with the Mario Kart bundle and other bundles that are coming soon, such as the Pokemon Legends ZA bundle, $500. And that's not a bad deal. If Nintendo decides to raise the price of the Switch 2 in response to economic circumstances and all these other companies raising their prices as well, I'll have something to say about that in a very negative way. But for now, they have kept their price stable. They have kept the Switch 2 at $450 and $500 with the bundle. They've raised everything else around it by $5, $10, but they've not touched the games in terms of how much money, and they've not touched the console, and that is all I really care about. The other stuff sucks, and I wish they didn't do it, but this is their bread and butter, the consoles and the games. So what does this have to do with Nintendo? Well, I have something to say. Everyone, when the Switch 2 was announced, was up in arms about the pricing. And yes, Mario Kart World being $80, Jamboree, Mario Party Jamboree, and Kirby and the Forgotten Land with its DLC all in one package, and the Switch 2 editions being $80, and Tears of the Kingdom also being $80 for the Switch 2 version is not acceptable in my opinion. I do not like $80 games. But even there, right, you can see a little bit of logic. With Mario Kart World, I have nothing. I have nothing for you. The world is big, the gameplay is very fun, the game looks gorgeous, but that's it, right? It's $80, and then Donkey Kong was $70, and all these other games are going to be $70. Kirby Air Riders was confirmed to be $70, the new Pokemon game is $70, Metroid Prime 4 is $70, and Mario Kart is $80. I don't know. Maybe it's the name, maybe it's just Mario, maybe they were just seeing what they could get away with because they know Mario Kart is going to sell just like 8 Deluxe did. I don't know, but I'm not a fan fan of that. With at least the other stuff, it makes a little bit of sense. If you want to say, okay, Tears of the Kingdom launched at $70, the graphical updates add $10. Pokemon Legends ZA and Metroid Prime 4 Beyonds, both those Switch 2 editions are only $70 as well, so $10 more for the extra graphics. If you want to look at Kirby and the Forgotten Land and Super Mario Party Jamboree, both those games are $20 extra for the graphical updates and the extra content, even though Jamboree I do not count in this because Jamboree is just a complete and total disaster in terms of its marketing, in terms of all of that gameplay, because the game itself is amazing. Like, I love Jamboree. But for it to be $80 and they didn't even upgrade the base game, the only thing that is upgraded here is the Jamboree TV mode, which everyone says is glitchy and buggy and terrible and doesn't work. That's robbery. It's highway robbery, and I hope that game crashes and burns. It is disgusting. But even with all of these $80 games, I say I hate that, but it makes a little bit of sense. I can see somewhat of a pricing model here, because what I'm really just looking for is logic. Why is Donkey Kong Bonanza $70 but Mario Kart World is $80? It's the question that will just continue to plague me as long as I live. But Switch 2 and their pricing has always been, in my opinion, a great price. Not even just a good one, not even just a good deal, a great price. Back in 2017, the Nintendo Switch launched at $300, and the hardware was old. Even then, it was old. When it launched, it was very old. The memes and jokes have not gone past me. I have not been blind to them. People call it the potato. People call it the worst console on the market in terms of power. And you know what? It is. And it was. But guess what? It was portable, and you could still play amazing games at 30 FPS sometimes, yes, but also at 60 FPS sometimes. Some of these games were running very, very well. Breath of the Wild looked amazing on the Switch. Mario Kart looked amazing on the Switch. Like, yes, there were plenty of games that did not run well, but there were also plenty of games that were pushed to their limits, and the console was doing everything it could to hold it together. And I have various theories about why it was only $300 and why they decided to go with such lackluster hardware. But at the end of the day, all you need to know is that console provided 150 million people with amazing experiences and was only $300, which even then when it launched was a steal. And yet people back then, don't forget, people back then were saying 300 was way too much. Nintendo would never get away with it. It was going to be another Wii U failure, and that ended up being pretty much the most untrue thing you could ever imagine, because it will surpass the DS here soon as the number 2 highest selling console of all time, and at some point I wouldn't be surprised if it does pass the PlayStation 2's 160 million units. Now here I am again, years later, months later, saying to you once more, the Nintendo Switch 2 is a great price. It is only $150 more expensive than the base model Nintendo Switch, and that came out in 2017, back when eggs were like $1 a dozen. So okay, cool, this random YouTuber, Ray's Nintendo Talk, decides the Switch 2 is worth $450. Who cares, right? Well, that's a great point. I am not really anybody, but you know who is somebody? The consumer. The market. People decide whether or not a console, whether or not any product is too much money by doing what? By buying it. By going out to the stores and purchasing an item for themselves. If something is too expensive, people will not buy it. And if something is priced just right, or even underpriced, if something is underpriced, this will happen the same way. But if something is priced just right, consumers will go out and they will buy that product, and they will buy it in droves. So let's look at the Switch 2. How many units did this console sell within its first 7 weeks? Well, the Nintendo Switch 2 sold over 6 million units in the first 7 weeks, shattering every video game console record ever. No other video game console ever of any kind has ever sold more this quickly than the Nintendo Switch 2 has. Now, they're able to confirm that that number is over 6 million units, but that 6 million did not sell within the quarter that the financial report reports. So the only number that we truly have to go off of in terms of like real, raw numbers is 5.82 million units, which is still absurd and still breaks every record in the book. Now also, I'm sure Mario Kart has sold over 6 million units as well, but the raw number we have from the quarter itself is 5.63 million units. 97%. The 97% of people who bought Switch 2s also bought Mario Kart World. That is an absurd attach rate. Now, this is not me using this sales number figure to say that $80 games are okay, or that they will even be profitable for Nintendo in terms of how many more games they will sell or not sell. Because to be honest, we don't really have a benchmark here as to what this number really is, because I'm sure the vast majority of these are just Mario Kart World bundles that came along with the Switch 2. So they got $30 off on that deal, and no one truly paid $80 for this game, at least those early adopters. And the next financial report probably won't be able to give us a better number either, because there will still be so many bundles that were sold. It's probably not going to be until Q1 report next year that we are able to see what this game did. And by then it will cover the holiday sales as well, and the game will keep selling and selling and selling, and we won't truly know until like a year from now and it's still selling, and then we say, well, I guess $80 wasn't a big deal after all, right? And so a lot of this would tell you, at least at face value, that the rage, the pure outrage, rage I have not seen since The Last of Us 2, this is nothing. It means nothing. The rage meant nothing. It meant nothing. Because people went out, people bought the games, people bought the consoles, and I think that would indicate to at least me that the pricing is not a big deal for now. Now, maybe if they increase it, that's a whole other conversation, but where things stand, the pricing is not a problem. Now, if you don't like this argument and you want to say, well, the numbers don't mean much, right? Even if people are outraged, that's just the vocal minority on the echo chamber of the internet. It doesn't really reflect what people actually think about this thing and what it means. Well, I think to a certain extent you are correct in that the online scape does not mean much for how many games or consoles are going to sell for Nintendo moving forward. But what I do think is a good number to gauge here is game keycards, because that is another thing that has gotten equal, if not more, amounts of outrage given to it. Well, here it is. Back at launch, the Switch 2 games that were not Mario Kart, that were not Nintendo exclusives, were not Nintendo first-party games, did not sell well, except for Cyberpunk 2077, the one third-party game that was not a keycard. So keycard games seem to not be selling well, and games that are on the full cartridge seem to be selling well. So the outrage is actually doing something when it applies to buying digital games versus physical games versus game keycard games. People who are mad are actually not buying it versus people online who were mad about the Switch 2 and went out and bought it anyways. I use it as a piece of evidence to support my argument, but some people might say, oh, you know, Nintendo. People who own Switches and Switch 2s, they don't care about third-party games. They only care about baby Nintendo games, and all Switch owners are babies anyways, right? Well, look at this. For the past month, Madden 26 has been in the top 3 best-selling games on Switch 2, right next to Donkey Kong Bonanza, and as of today, Kirby and the Forgotten Land finally surpassed it as that upgrade pack is coming out later in the week. Now, yes, Madden is technically a game keycard, but this is digital sales here. We're looking at people going to the eShop, logging in, putting their credit card information, and downloading a game digitally, not through the game keycard, not through the physical thing that you get and put into your console. It's not some download code, it's simply digital sales only. So this is proof that not only people are going out and not buying game keycards but are deciding to buy physical, but they're also buying third-party games. So it's not just Nintendo fans not caring about third-party. No, we do. We just want to buy games that aren't game keycards and that are digital, but also are third-party. Like, it's a big circle here, but you can see what I'm trying to say. It's not actually reflective of the game keycard situation. It's reflective of people caring about Madden and third parties on the Nintendo Switch 2. So what this tells me is that the outrage is real half the time, right? It's only real when it reflects in the sales, when it reflects in people's actions and wallets. And people actually do care about game keycards. They don't want to buy games that are going to be inaccessible in 10 years, 20 years, however long it takes for those servers to go down. They want to buy games that they know they'll be able to own and own forever. The point of this video is mostly just this. The Nintendo Switch 2 is a great deal, and people seem to think the same way. People are going out, they're buying Switch 2 in droves. They're buying Mario Kart World in droves. The pricing doesn't affect it. And while yes, it might be expensive to pay $450 for a console, that is still a good deal in terms of how many people are deciding it's worth it for them. This is an image that really changed my perspective on a lot of this. I thought that the Nintendo Switch 2 was a good deal, but now I think it is a great deal. $450 versus $550 and $600 to get into gaming Wow. Now those are fair comparisons. Some people might say Xbox Series S is way cheaper. It's like almost $100 cheaper. Some people might say the digital edition of PlayStation 5 is cheaper. But those don't allow for physical games like the Switch 2 does. The Switch 2 allows for you to put in a physical cartridge and take it wherever you like, and that is still something I think we should be able to compare here. Physical consoles allowing for physical games. And that is the entry point if you want physical games, which a lot of people do because people aren't buying game key cards. This stuff matters, right? The sales numbers matter. The price, markets, all these other consoles, they matter. And Nintendo is pricing their console at a very, very good number here, especially considering that the PlayStation 5 just now raised its price. All the prices are up, and Nintendo is looking pretty good right now in terms of how much money you have to spend to get into it. Now, the final argument I could see somebody making saying that all of this is wrong, that I'm wrong, that it's too expensive, is just that it's too expensive. That sure, the Switch 2 is the cheapest console on the market if you want all of those games, if you want physical editions, if you want all of that, but yet they would still say to me, well, all of this is too expensive to begin with. All of these consoles are way too expensive. The Switch 2 should be $250 and the PlayStation should be $300. Well, if that's what you think, then I don't know what to tell you, because that's just kind of where we're at right now in the world. And sure, you can say it's too expensive, but that's just where it's at. That's what the market has set out. It makes sense in terms of logical leaps from console generation to console generation. $300 for the Switch, $450 for the Switch 2, which can run games at 120 frames per second, which, by the way, Silksong is confirmed to have 120 Hz on the Switch 2. This console is capable of a lot, and it is only $450. It's capable of 4K. We see that with Switch 2 editions of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Those games are gorgeous. And also, I must remind you, I've talked about this several times, and maybe there's another video in here somewhere with this next idea, but all of these games that we have seen on the Nintendo Switch 2, Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Switch 2 editions of all of these old games, Metroid Prime 4, Pokemon Legends ZA, all of these games coming up and have already released were initially developed for the Nintendo Switch. Age of Imprisonment, Hyrule Warriors, and I wouldn't be surprised if Kirby Air Riders as well, all developed initially for the Nintendo Switch. We have yet to see a exclusive, built from the ground up Nintendo Switch 2 game. And this is huge because that means we have yet to see what these developers can truly do with this hardware. Third-party developers have been slacking big time, okay? Elden Ring, people are saying at Gamescom that game looks horrible on the Switch 2, that it's running terribly. All these other third-party games, Madden with its frame rate stutters, like, what in the world are we doing, guys? This console is capable of more. Why are you not able to push it to its limits? Why are you not able to get a solid frame rate going? I blame that more on the companies than I do the Switch 2. The hardware is capable of what it's capable of, and if you can't reach that, that's a developer issue. The only games that have truly reached their full potential in terms of graphical fidelity are Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild in terms of their Switch 2 editions. And yes, you could argue that that game is older, so they know how to push that out a little bit more because this engine was initially built for the Wii U, moved over to the Switch, and then had a sequel on the Switch, and now, to its graphical limits, it's being pushed on the Switch 2 to 60 FPS, 4K docked. Like, that is still amazing to see, but I just look at these games and I see potential. I see even more potential. So we've not even gotten the best parts of the Switch 2 yet. The best games are yet to come in terms of graphics and in terms of gameplay, to be honest. Donkey Kong Bonanza is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of amazing first-party experiences. And that, to be frank, is the risk of being an early adopter. If you buy a console at launch, you're not going to get the best out of the hardware, you're not going to get the most out of your experience because the developers are still trying to figure out what in the world they're doing with this thing. How do you push it to its limits if you've never operated it before, if you've never developed for it before? And as the years go along, as the developers continue to hone their craft and take notes from other developers across the company, across the industry, they are going to get better and better, and this console is going to push out better looking games. And as the years go on, that value is going to increase, especially if, knock on wood, the price actually does increase for the Switch 2. The more games that come out are going to be gorgeous. The more games are going to be even more valuable. This is the Nintendo Switch 2, and this is why I believe it is such a great price point. Because with Sony, the big thing is, right, like between Sony and Xbox, the exclusives. And Sony has had that crown for a long time in terms of those two consoles, but now Sony is really struggling to push out their own first-party games that people are really excited about. Because what are people excited about this year, right? Resident Evil, that's a third-party game. Their game of the year last year was Astro Bot, and that was from a tiny studio that Sony didn't even give a crap about, didn't even think was going to make any good games, and didn't give them hardly any resources or any team members. That team ended up creating a passion project that Sony could never, ever have seen coming. And of course, Nintendo has amazing exclusives as well, and that is why I believe this console is worth every penny. So, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video and listening to my argument. What do you think? Let me know down below in the comments if you agree with me or if you disagree, and to why. Thank you so much for the support on my channel recently. That Silksong video took off in ways I never could have imagined, so I really appreciate you sticking around if you're new, and let me know down in the comments if you are new what your favorite video on my channel has been so far. Make sure you press that like button, press that subscribe button, and click the notification bell to make sure you know exactly when all of my videos release, and consider joining my membership program, just a few bucks a month to help support me as a content creator and get a bunch of cool perks for yourself. Click on the left side of your screen if you somehow did not see that Silksong video I am talking about, and click on the right side of your screen to watch my Donkey Kong ending breakdown. That game was phenomenal and I really loved the ending. Make sure you have yourself a phenomenal day. This has been Ray's Nintendo Talk. I have been Ray, and I will see you all in the next video.